The requirement to recall that you were a slave in Egypt enables the individual to avoid feelings of haughtiness. To what can this be compared? The Shagas Aryeh, Rabbi Ari Leib of Metz, drew the following parable. There was a king who set out on a hunting trip. As he was exploring the fields in hope of finding game, he happened upon a shepherd who was sitting next to his flock of sheep and playing the flute. The king was enchanted by the pleasant tunes that were emanating from the flute, and he found himself unable to move from his place. After a certain amount of time, the shepherd concluded his melody. The king approached the shepherd and engaged him in conversation, only to discover that he boasted a razor-sharp intellect and possessed a great wisdom as well. The king was amazed by the shepherd's profundity of thought, and he invited him to reside in his palace. The shepherd agreed and went with the king. From then on, the shepherd lived in the royal palace, and the king sought his counsel regarding all matters. In time, the shepherd rose to become one of the king's highest-ranking ministers. Other ministers were filled with envy toward the newly appointed minister who was so beloved by the king. They decided to slander him, informing the king that his trusted minister had stolen from the royal treasury. The king summoned the shepherd for an interrogation, but he managed to convince all those who were present that he was an honest and upright individual. However, the jealous ministers still managed to persuade the king to conduct a search of the shepherd's quarters, in hopes of finding some evidence of theft. They all went together in search of the shepherd's quarters, but found nothing more than a modestly furnished home, lacking any luxuriousness whatsoever. They went from room to room, finding nothing suspicious, until they come to a room that was sealed by both lock and bolt. "What's inside this room?" asked the king. The shepherd fell to his knees and began to plead with the king. "Your Highness, I beg of you, do not ask me to show you what lies beyond this door. I am embarrassed by what you will find there." The shepherd's pleas only served to strengthen the king's suspicions, and he demanded that the door be opened. When the door was opened, he glanced around the room, but he saw nothing more than old clothing of the shepherd and a flute. The king and his officers were bewildered. "Your Highness," explained the former shepherd, "from the day that I came to your palace, I have not grown the least bit haughty or conceited over the prominence that I have achieved. This is due to my daily visits to this room, when I sit here and play my flute, recalling my days as a simple shepherd. So too with a Jew," concluded Rabbi Ari Leib. "Remembering that you were a slave in Egypt will prevent a Jew from becoming arrogant. For whenever he feels himself swelling with pride, he will recall his days as a lowly slave in Egypt, and the haughtiness will thus be banished from his heart."